adjustments. I've got a secret for you guys. If you know what this is, you can adjust most of them. And we're going to talk about Mercedes idle air valves today. High idle speeds, weird idle problems, and what controls idle air valves, and whether or not it's time to adjust the idle air valve or look for a different problem. So we're going to break this video up into two parts. We're going to start with wax element idle air valves. What are these? Well, before Mercedes had electronic idle air valves, they had these nice little idle air valves that used a wax element in the thermostat. Sorry, a little under the weather today. So these guys use engine temperature. This literally sits in coolant, and there's a gasket on the bottom. By the way, if you try to remove it, the bolts really like to corrode and break off in the thermostat housing, so you may want to smack them with a little impact driver, a small one, and spray them with penetrating oil and let them sit for 24 hours before it's need to remove. But this is the best example I can think of an analog part that performs a consistent function with no electronic inputs. So this is great. Now this valve comes from M116 and 117 engines built with, for the most part, with Bosch D-Jetronic injection. I think in 1974, 75, the D-Jetronic cars went to this style of valve. But this is what you'd find on an early 450 SL, a 280 SE 3.5, 4.5, 300 SEL 3.5 or 4.5. You will not find this on a 300 SEL 6.3, but you will find a wax element idle air valve on the thermostat, on the injection pump. It's part of the injection pump thermostat. So this thing is simply to do one thing, and that is regulate the amount of air going through the engine from cold to hot. So with both of these, they have one characteristic. When you start the engine will rev up to somewhere between 950 and 1500 RPM. 1500 RPM is like the number you'd see on a 280 SE 4.5, early 450 SL, 280 SE 3.5, etc., etc. They will start off and they will rev viciously to about 1500. And then they will drop down to idle speed, which is like 700-800 RPM. And as that wax element expands, it closes a little piston in here that reduces airflow. Great, right? Well, sometimes the piston can seize. There is a way to service these. So both of these valves have a removable center element. The late valve, which I have here, was used on 4.5 liter and 3.5 liter engines starting, I think it was like 74, maybe it was 75, I can't remember, but these were used all the way up to 1980. And they were used also on some early Euro 380 and 500 models. So if you have an 81 500 SE or SEL, they'll use this thing. And the wax element, again, provides the idle regulation. So on these, it doesn't work on every single one of them. You got to be careful with this stuff. But you can actually remove with a puller this central part here. This thing, I'm really not sure how you would remove it. I guess you have to grip it with something and then tap the body off. But both of them use the same principle, so hopefully they're both just as rebuildable. But you can undo it and change the wax element, free up the air slider, and then hope for the best. Now, they really don't go bad that often, but there is one thing that we have to talk about, especially with these tall valves, and that's the idle surge. So all things equal, if you have a 280 SE 4.5 or 3.5 that goes up and down during warm-up idle, idles up too fast, then falls on its face and idles down, then idles up again, idles down. If you have a good ignition vacuum box, it doesn't leak, you don't have any leaks anywhere, You don't have any major vacuum leaks at injector seals. In fact, your vacuum levels are good and your ignition's not advanced too far. You can take this little shoulder right here and you can tap it down about 1/2 millimeter, right there where my thumb is. This goes down, and that will keep the piston and the idle air valve from fluttering, because that's what causes that problem. Let's go to the next generation of idle air valves. These are the electronic idle air valves, and sometimes people replace them with Chinese ones because they're idiots and they don't understand. They didn't do any reading to understand that these do not go bad. Now this valve here, which is a void in the middle, you can see there's a little turbine in there, but it's kind of hard to see. This is used on a 380 or a 500, and it should get like 3 to 4 volts depending on the application. Part number is like 000141, 1425, 1225, 1325, depending on the market. So Euro cars and US cars had different valves. A Euro 380 would have a different valve than a US 380. A Euro 500 would have a different valve than a US 500. So they're not just all interchangeable across the board. They are controlled by an idle control unit. And guess what? The idle control units vary depending on the market the car was sold in, as well as whether or not it has something like air conditioning. Cars that have AC have a different idle air valve as well, or a different idle air valve control unit. So a big thing with these valves is people will often blame them when the engine doesn't idle at the right speed. They'll go, oh, the idle is too high. That's almost always the default failure. Idle is too high. If it's too low, you have a mixture adjustment problem with your little 3 millimeter Allen screw, or possibly a fuel distributor problem. But if it is too high or it's lumpy, goes up and down or whatever, you need to look at the over voltage relay and the idle speed control unit. Now, where are these things located? I'm going to give you some information quickly, but it's really not a topic for this video. On a 126, the idle speed control unit, early car, is located in the false firewall by the monovalve, to the right of the monovalve if you're facing it. On a 380 or 500 SL, it's located inside the dash behind the glove box. If you're looking for the over voltage relay on a 126, it's in the fuse box. If you're looking for it on a 107, it's above the fuse panel in the right fender, like where you would put your right foot if you're a passenger. And yes, those early OVPs, if your car still has it, can be opened up and repaired, and most of the time they're the problem. Ditto for solder joints, bad solder joints in the idle speed control relay board. Now we're going to go to my favorite of all the idle air valves. This one has it all. This is used on the 560 and 420 and the 500 if you have a second gen 500. Now what makes this valve different? Well, first of all, it's got a bigger inlet and outlet than a 380 or 500 valve. Second of all, it's got an adjustment here. Now you can see this little void right here. Usually there's a plastic cap over it that you have to gently remove. But this is like an 8 by 0.5 thread. It's a very fine thread. And if you take a little screw and you screw it in, and you put the screw in the vise and you leave a little gap here and you sort of pry till this center insert moves out about 1 millimeter, you will reduce your idle speed. Now, why did I bring that up? Well, because so many people of 560 SELs and 420 SELs will reseal the whole intake manifold, new injector seals, air plenum boot, fuel distributor O-ring, you name it, injectors, injector seals, they'll still get like a high idle, 900 to 1000 RPM idle. So what do you do then? Well, you clean this out, see if it makes a difference. If it does make a difference, great. But if it doesn't make a difference, tap on it. See if it makes a difference then. If it is responsive to tapping and it closes a little bit more and the idle speed goes down, that means you really need to soak this thing overnight in like ATF just to get the piston moving all the way. But then if it still doesn't do what it needs to do, you can use this adjustment to bring the adjustment out about 1 millimeter. That's all you need. 1 millimeter, maybe 1.5. Your idle speed will come down to about 700, 750, which is a good idle speed. That's if, again, everything has to be working. No check engine light, no oxygen sensor problem, no EHA works well when unplugged. Everything has to be working properly. You have to have millivolt amperage in the EHA. You have to know all your injector seals are good. You can't have any vacuum leaks. You can't, any major vacuum leaks. Like a teeny tiny little vacuum leak isn't going to affect it very much. But I get so annoyed whenever I hear like a 560 SL idling at 950 RPM or 1050 RPM, and it's almost always because these go out of adjustment. Okay, well, I hope you found that video to be informative and helpful. By the way, if your engine races, check your OVP again. Hope you were watching to the end. The OVP goes out. You'll get an ABS light and a fast idle. It's in some of my other videos. Hope you found this helpful. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you to all of our Patreon members. And don't buy a Chinese idle air valve. Your idle air valve is fine.